A Healer's Gift. Adventures of Broad. Book 1. Adventures on Broad. Written by Tao Wong. Narrated by Eric Martin. Chapter 22. This, smash, is, smash. Awesome, smash. Lightning dances again as Daniel's mace crushes the behemoth crawler. The creature shudders again, the lightning piercing through its shattered carapace. It doesn't go down easy, though, swinging its head around to strike at Daniel with its mandibles. The jerky attack is caught easily on Daniel's shield, and its body is levered up long enough for Daniel to swing an underhand blow to its thinner underarmor. The crawler shudders once more and falls dead, allowing Daniel to survey the rest of the nest on the 6th floor. To his right, Asen is throwing knife after knife into the squirming mass of junior crawlers. They struggle to get to her, but as they close, she lightly leaps away and continues her attack. As each strike hits, the telltale flicker of lightning arrives, shocking the crawlers. Asen switches targets as one crawler gets too close, twisting the knife in her hand and sending it into a spiraling movement as she activates her skill proficiency, Piercing Throw. The newly imbued knife shatters the carapace as it lands, lightning mana doing further damage inside the unprotected flesh. Through experimentation, the novice adventurers have learned that Asen's knives hold the enchantment for a short distance before fading away, though imbuing the knives with her skill proficiencies aided in extending the range. As the injured crawler finally manages to close the distance, Asen backflips out of the way, her trailing foot kicking the crawler in the face as one last spiteful farewell, lightning dancing as the blow lands to kill the creature. Daniel enters the fray then, his mace making quick work of the last few wounded junior crawlers. As they loot the bodies, neither adventurer can hide their glee at the speed they completed this nest. So, Daniel tilts his head to Asen, hefting his mace and trying to sound professional. Boss? The catkin, in her usual crouch, looks up at Daniel, wrinkling her muzzle, though her eyes sparkle as well. She takes a moment to act like she's thinking about it, but her mind is already made up as she nods firmly. Unfortunately, actually finding the boss in the 6th level was a chore. Nearly half again as large as the 5th floor, the two adventurers have to call it a day before they are able to locate its lair. Even with Daniel occasionally wiping their fatigue away with his gift, he could do nothing about the mental exhaustion of crawling through the dark in constant danger. They have no luck either for the next 3 days, and on the 4th they arrive too late as another party finishes the monstrous crawler off minutes before they arrive. Glumly, the pair leaves the celebrating party to their spoils, knowing the boss would likely respawn in a new location. The only major gain during the last few days was that they found the stairs down to the 7th floor where they registered themselves, but did not explore. "I'm feeling lucky today," Daniel states as they transfer down to the 6th floor once again. Asen just chuffs, having heard this pronouncement 4 times already, though she is as excited to get this done as he is. However, this time, he speaks the truth as they come across the 6th floor's boss only after a few hours of searching and a single fight with the nest. As Mary had initially mentioned, the boss in the dungeon was of the same form as the other monsters before it, just more powerful. Having seen the corpse of the boss before, neither adventurer is surprised at the titanic crawler's size, but a part of them still wonders how it managed to make its way around the tight tunnels of the 6th floor. The titanic crawler was twice the size of a behemoth crawler, its head alone 4.5 feet wide. Its body stretched behind it, curled up in what looked to be sleep and stumping their guesses, though it was at least 20 feet long. Its carapace gleamed darkly in the faded light, the creature resting while its prey searched for it. The two do not need to speak, having worked out surefire tactics when dealing with a single enemy. Asen enters first, silent as only a catkin could be, and quickly clambers up a wall, putting herself out of danger. Hidden in the shadows, she readies her attacks and begins the battle with a piercing throw. She follows up immediately with another, targeting the same spot in the middle of the back, looking to shatter the carapace. Too far away for the bracer's enchantments to work, the shots still shatter the carapace in small chunks, sufficient to allow the knives following to land in unprotected flesh. The crawler roars, shaking the cavern as it comes under attack and rears towards Asen's newly revealed presence. Daniel takes advantage of this, charging the creature to shield bash it. The creature stumbles back, lightning dancing as Daniel proceeds to target the legs on one side to cripple the boss's movements. It is only 2 blows in, a single leg among multitudes shattered before the crawler spins, using its bulk to smash against Daniel. He brings his hands up together in time to block, using both his shield and mace to support his block. Safe from the immediate retaliation, Daniel begins to hammer at the creature, keeping it focused on him as Asen drops from the ceiling and runs the creature's length to reach her embedded knives. Once there, she begins tearing at the shattered carapace to get at the unprotected flesh inside. The boss thrashes, attempting to throw Asen off while attempting to crush Daniel with his mandibles. Daniel fights defensively, mostly, foiling attacks against him and lashing out when he can to send sparks of lightning damage against the monster. It seems little slowed by the repeated bashings, and as Asen finally creates an opening wide enough for her own likening, she plunges her knife into its back. The titanic crawler does something unexpected, rolling over entirely. The catkin throws herself off, but the momentary surprise means that she is unable to clear the body entirely. The titanic crawler's bulk lands on her legs, forcing a choked scream from her. Daniel leaps, using both arms to swing his mace at the softer carapace that the crawler has exposed. The blows force the creature to roll again to protect its body, a foot spearing Asen in the stomach as it does so. She lets out a choked groan, pain radiating from her broken feet, but the catkin pushes past it, chopping at the leg with her knife to free herself. Once she is able to do so, she begins to pull herself away from the monster, letting out choked-off whimpers of pain with each movement. Luckily, Daniel has the creature's attention now, allowing Asen to crawl away as he triggers his proficiencies again and again, battering at the creature to keep its attention. He can feel the strength of his blows slowing, fatigue catching up as he attacks and dodges in a desperate attempt to save his friend. Finally, a lucky shield bash stuns the creature for a few seconds, allowing Daniel to run and grab his teammate to escape into a nearby tunnel shaft. Inside the smaller tunnel, safe for the moment, Daniel spins around to focus on healing his teammate. He doesn't need his gift to tell she is gravely injured, both her legs shattered by the weight of the behemoth, and the crawler's leg still sticking from her stomach. Focused, he pushes his gift out, even as he extracts the leg and begins to rearrange her leg bones manually. Asen chokes back a quick scream before falling unconscious from the pain as Daniel sets her bones with quick, efficient movements. His gift begins to take from him almost immediately, pulling memories of previous battles, stretching muscles and nerves as it strips it of their gained experience to fuel the healing. What feels like days later, as memories and experience, both good and bad, disappear, Daniel comes to from his trance and slumps next to his friend. He shudders, his body slowly accustoming itself to its new state. Asen is awake by the time he is fully aware, staring at her healed body with awe. She points to him, and Daniel just nods, and she chuffs out, a low rumble coming from her. Still not having learned to speak Catkin, Daniel just shrugs and forces himself to stand up. "You know, I bet that boss hasn't healed yet," Daniel muses, his mace slapping into his hand. The agreeable yowl from Asen indicates her agreement, and Daniel's face tightens into a grim smile. Time to get some experience back. Ugh. Daniel shakes the remnant of his shield loose, tossing it to the side in disgust. The crawler had attempted its smashing move again, this time dropping its weight on Daniel. Unfortunately for the crawler, it hadn't expected the adventurer to just block it, the strong ex-miner catching the full force on his extended shield arm and just about able to hold it off the ground. The mistake was fatal for the already wounded creature, Asen sliding underneath to savage the creature from beneath and pierce its 3 hearts. The creature dead, its body dissolving, the 2 adventurers rest for a few moments before they move to pick up the boss's chemical sack and monostone before walking to the chest. Inside, they grin at the largest monostone either has seen, glowing with clear light. Now this is a real stone, Daniel thinks, picking it up to admire it. Asen purrs for a moment, and then her face closes down, looking between the stone and Daniel. She then points to him and states, "Yours." Huh? Pulled from his greedy contemplation, Daniel shakes his head at her implication. Ours? Yours, insists Asen, now pushing at his arm to make the stone get closer to Daniel. No, ours. Daniel pauses, realizing he's falling into the rhythm of her speech again. This is ours. We're partners. You save me, I save you. That's the way this works. Asen chuffs, letting out a low growl, and pushes again at the stone. Yours. No. The 2 then exchange glares, eyes locked in a contest of wills that neither wants to give up. The tense silence hovers around them for long minutes, neither willing to look away or give in. It is only the sound of approaching crawlers that make the 2 break their gazes. Daniel glares at her one last time, then shrugs, tossing the stone back into the chest. Fine. No one's then, Daniel grumbles, turning to walk towards the incoming monsters. If they weren't taking the stone, at least he could start making some money back from the other crawlers. Asen just stands there, shocked at this frustrating human, a low rumbling growl and catkin arising from her throat. That was money he was throwing away, a lot of it. Why would he not let her show her gratitude for saving her life? Frustrated and unhappy that she lost, she grabs the stone out from the chest again and scrambles after him. At least she wasn't willing to leave good money behind to make a point. Chapter 23. You 2 should talk, Liev says to Daniel as he waits around for Asen to finish up with their day's take. I don't know what you're talking about, Daniel replies, looking back to Liev, and the older attendant sniffs, running a hand through the curly mess of his hair again. You 2 are having problems. It's affecting your work. I've seen the tally for the last few days. You 2 are down. And it's not just the shorter hours you are working either, Liev says and raises a finger. Though that's part of it. I've never seen you or her out of the dungeon before 8 bells 2 days in a row before, and this is the 4th day you are both here. Daniel crosses his arms, replying, You all keep saying I should take a break. Maybe that's what we're doing. Is it? Liev reiterates, and Daniel shifts uncomfortably, looking away from the attendant. I thought so. Talk. Standing up, Liev walks away, and Daniel sighs. Liev was right. The past few days, the uncomfortable silence between the 2 adventurers after their first real fight had affected their teamwork, and the unspoken topic between them hangs in the air, suffocating them in the crawl spaces of the 6th floor. It was so heavy, it drove the 2 up early. Asen comes over, handing a pouch over to Daniel. He hefts the pouch, a part of him wondering if she's giving him more than his share, before he shakes his head, clearing it. Liev is right. This was beginning to be a distraction. While Daniel battles with his doubts, Asen has turned away and started off. Asen, Daniel calls out. Shoulders hunching slightly, the catkin turns to look at Daniel, golden eyes glinting with expectation. We need to talk, Daniel says as he approaches her. She chuffs, then nods finally, waving him ahead. Daniel rolls his eyes, wondering why he's always leading. For a time, Daniel debates where to go, before defaulting to where he feels most comfortable, the spinning top. The top is surprisingly quiet, and Daniel blinks, surprised at the lack of patrons. Elise smiles as they come in, waving them over to a table and coming over to serve them herself. "Daniel, and this must be Asen." Asen nods, and Elise smiles. "I know what he wants, but we have burdock root if you wish, and the roast is just about ready." Asen lets out a little happy yowl of delight, nodding to Elise's suggestions, who smiles, moving off to get their order sorted. Daniel shifts uncomfortably in his chair as Asen turns to regard him, silent. They just sit there, waiting for the food to come, the silence growing increasingly uncomfortable, before Daniel finally gives in. "We're having problems," Daniel begins, and waits for a reaction from Asen. Getting none, he forges on anyway. "We aren't working as well together. We're getting in each other's way, and, well, it's just not going well." Asen finally relents and offers him a short nod before Daniel continues. "It started with the fight with the boss, and the healing. I guess you want to know why I didn't tell you about it before." Asen tilts her head for a moment before letting out a little chuff and shakes it. "Stone." "You are upset with me about the stone?" Daniel blinks, not exactly what he was thinking. "Yes, I give, you refuse," Asen continues, shaking her head. "Throw away." "Of course I refused it," Daniel states. "I can't take everything for myself. That would be wrong. You don't take from your team." "Throw away?" Asen snarls and points. "No respect, Asen." "I do respect you. That's why I refused the stone." Daniel protests, and Asen huffs, nostrils flaring out as her tail swishes out behind her, straight as a sword. "No respect, throw away." Asen snarls again and thumps her paw down, claws coming out slightly. Daniel leans back away from the catkin, the snarl sending involuntary shivers deep down his monkey back. "Asen, I do respect you. You're my team." Asen snarls again, but before she can speak, Elise appears, carrying their drinks. "You two calm down, or do it outside of my inn." Daniel blinks and notes how everyone is watching the two of them. He hangs his head slightly while Asen looks around, realizes she's actually jumped up onto her chair as she speaks with Daniel, and hops back down, looking slightly abashed as well. Elise, seeing the two have begun to behave themselves, points her fingers at the two of them. "You two should actually try talking." "We are," Daniel exclaims, and Elise reaches over, smacking him on the top of his head. "I said talk, not shout the same things over and over again. Explain your side of things." Shaking her head, Elise walks out, muttering, "Youngsters," under her breath. As Elise leaves the two of them, it is Asen who breaks the silence first. "Asen give gift. Gift! Daniel throw away gift. Throw away respect." Finishing, Asen chuffs and reaches for her drink, guzzling it down. Daniel frowns, shaking his head. "But I couldn't take it from you. You earned it." At Asen's glare, he holds up a hand, trying to figure out how to explain. "You know I grew up in the mines, right?" Asen nods, and Daniel continues. "The mines, you work in a team. Always. The stupid ones, the prospectors, the fools, they work alone and die alone. Real miners, we work together because the mine is always looking to end you. Cave-ins, monsters, bad pockets of air. Without your team, you are nothing. Without Asen, I would be nothing in the dungeon. And you never take all the ore, all the mana from another. If you do, they might not be able to come back the next day." Asen snorts at the last bit, but chuffs a little, shaking her head. She's slightly mollified by what Daniel has said, but is still upset. As the two adventurers ponder the matter, Elise arrives with their dinner, shooting them one last quelling look as business is finally picking up. Hurrying away, Elise leaves the two to sit in silence, enjoying the roast. When dinner is finished, Asen fishes in her pocket and lays out a pair of silver. She looks Daniel straight in the eye and says, "Dinner. Gift." Daniel nods at her words, murmuring a soft, "Thank you." This was one battle he would not fight. Satisfied, Asen slinks off, the crowd of adventurers and guards eyeing the catkin and smiling when she leaves. Chapter 24. "This is the adventurer you mentioned?" The speaker is broad-shouldered with an erect bearing and a small faded scar on his left cheek, wearing the green and gold uniform of the army. The man speaks to Liev as he points a finger at Daniel, who is enjoying his breakfast in the early morning. Liev nods, hands folded behind his back and, surprisingly, his unruly red hair combed flat. "Yes, champion, he is. This is Daniel Chai, healer and adventurer." Striding over, the champion barks to Daniel in an authoritative voice that brooks no argument. "I have need of another healer. Pays 1.5 gold a day for a healer. Will be gone for a week at most. We leave tomorrow." His mouth full, Daniel chews and swallows quickly, casting a pitiful glance at Liev for a further explanation as he does so. "This is Champion Eranin from the Duke's Guard. It seems that an orc raiding party has been spotted 2 days' ride from here, and the champion has volunteered to fight it. You'll be joined by 12 other adventurers and a platoon of the Duke's Guard." Quest offered. Accompany Champion Eranin in battling the orc raiding party. Reward, 1.5 gold a day as a healer. Daniel scratches at his chin as he finishes swallowing. "I'd be happy to do so, but I do work with another adventurer, Asen. She uses knives, but she's a much better tracker than me." 1 gold a day, Eranin states, and begins to turn around. He stops as Liev clears his throat, waiting for the champion to turn to him. "Champion, I am afraid I must inform you, as per your request, that she is a catkin." "What?" Eranin turns and looks at his potential healer, and then the guild attendant. "Forget it. We don't need those thieving creatures in the group, just you, healer." "Then no," Daniel states calmly, though the words make the entire room fall silent. Elise, having come out from the kitchen, winces, matronly brown eyes narrowing in concern. "Do you know who I am?" Eranin growls, leaning forward to meet Daniel in the eyes. "You will come with me." "No." Daniel meets the gaze for a brief moment, and then is forced to look away, unable to meet the pressure exerted by the man's presence. Yet, stubborn nature refuses to give in to the man's demands. He would not abandon his team. A hand slams into the table again, Eranin snarling, "I could destroy you for this insolence." "Champion," Liev intervenes, coughing into his hand, "as per guild charter, an adventurer may turn down any request for any reason so long as he has not previously accepted it. Daniel is within his rights, if not his mind." Eranin snarls, a hand trembling on the table before he regains control of his temper and stalks out of the room, shoving the door open with a crash, Liev following silently behind. As they leave, Daniel feels a hard smack on the top of his head, Elise holding the offending spoon. "You idiot! That was the Duke's champion!" Elise complains, pointing towards the recently departed figure. "If you had played nice, you could have gotten personal quests and more." Daniel rubs his head, trying to figure out how to explain this to Elise. She needed an explanation, probably one that was complicated, but it was simple, really. Asen was his friend and his partner, and you always worked with your team because that's what you did in the mines. Once you had a partner, you worked together no matter what. Eventually, he tries with, "I work with Asen." Elise's groan is what he expected, though having overheard their previous conversation, She understands his thinking to a point. Still, the damnable stubborn child. While she is standing there, frustrated, Daniel switches topics to something that puzzles him. I didn't think Liev disliked her too. Elise rubs her temples as she stares at Daniel, a headache forming while she explains to him, Liev is just doing his job. The champion doesn't work with beastkin, and probably made it clear in his quest. Oh. Daniel frowns and looks at his hands, trying to understand the reasoning behind such a decision. In the end, he shrugs and dismisses it. It was not his concern why others chose to do what they did, just what he chose to do himself. Gulping down the last of his meal, Daniel stands and gives Elise a peck on the cheek. Asen and he were going to try fighting a single ogre today on the 7th floor. Working the 7th floor was tough, and they had avoided the titanic crawler for the last few days as their close defeat was still fresh in their minds. Perhaps trying the new floor would provide much-needed variety, even if Daniel still didn't have the money for proper chainmail. This was not what I was expecting, Daniel mutters, staring around the 7th floor. The ceiling stretches for a good 40 feet, glowstones interspersed throughout the ceiling that it looked like daylight itself in the cavern. The ground was covered in lush grass, and occasional small trees and more often bushes range across their view. Asen nods firmly, gliding soundlessly across the grass in her light leather armor and boots before tentatively poking at a bush. When nothing happens, she squats down and eyes it closer, before shrugging and moving to the next type to repeat her actions. Daniel keeps watch of the cavern while she does her thing, a part of him glad that he's no longer forced to crouch. If not for good massages and a constant barrage of heal spells, he felt he would be stuck in a permanent half-crouch after the last several months. A low, rhythmic thudding brings both adventurers' attention back to point, Asen pulling her cloak tighter before working her way into the shadows. Daniel steps forward to face the new threat, and then gulps as he spots an ogre for the first time, hands grown clammy. 9 feet tall, wearing a ragged loincloth and wielding a club, the creature sports a potbelly and a pig snout that is just the tip of a truly ugly but humanoid visage. It roars at seeing an intruder in its domain, rushing forwards to punish Daniel. Daniel tenses, watching for the club to begin its strike as he forces himself to breathe slowly. The first battle was always the most dangerous, as no knowledge of the monster's proclivities were available to draw upon. Rather than rushing in, Daniel intends to focus on defense instead. The club begins its downward swing, but Daniel does not move, instinct telling him to hold still till the ogre is forced to commit to the attack. The ogre does not faint, though, continuing the motion with ever-increasing speed, such that Daniel has to throw himself aside, forced to give up an opportunity to counter to just dodge the blow. This is not like fighting the crawlers or kobolds. The fight reminds him more of training against Litzburn, a situation where his opponent had cunning and guile. As the ogre winds up to swing again, it is shocked by Asen's thrown knife from her hiding place. The knife pierces the ogre's back, digging into its spine and stunning it for a moment. More knives land in quick succession as Daniel takes advantage of the momentary opening to slam his mace into the ogre's knee twice before he springs back from the retaliatory attack. As the ogre swings again, Daniel sheds the swing with his shield, but is overpowered by the ogre's strength and is driven to his knees. The ogre continues to swing, each blow smashing aside Daniel's attempts at parrying, staggering the adventurer beneath his shield. Each parried blow sends shudders of pain through his body, his shoulder and arms taking the abuse as his shield begins to crack. As the ogre steps forward again, Asen throws another piercing shot, this time aimed at its already injured knee. The knee gives way, and Daniel throws himself into a roll to avoid the falling body. Asen continues to pelt the ogre with her throwing knives, each knife sinking into its body with little resistance and shocking the creature with lightning, even as Daniel returns to beat on the ogre with his mace. Crippled, the ogre does not last much longer before the attacks of the two merciless adventurers. As the body fades, they find only a few coins left behind and a mana stone. The now experienced adventurers eye the stone, satisfied at the increase in quality once again, before Asen tucks the stone away. "You know, I felt kind of bad there," Daniel says as he rubs his shoulder. The repeated attacks have numbed his arm and injured his left shoulder, the shield slightly cracked under the onslaught. His knee throbs as well from where Daniel was forced to the ground. Nothing that a simple minor heal would not fix, which is what he does immediately, sighing in pleasure at the lack of pain. Asen shrugs, not understanding Daniel's feelings on this. It was a monster. The ogre needed to die, no matter how much it looked like a human or how helpless it was at the end. A dungeon-created monster wasn't even real, not in the sense that sentient races were real, just constructs. Daniel looks out over the landscape before them, before turning to Asen. Up or stay? Asen ponders the question, thinking about the hallways above. The mana stone she had just received was definitely a level higher, which meant more copper. She hated being in debt, especially with her other obligations. More money faster was good, but it was dangerous too. Daniel had struggled fighting a single ogre. What if two came? On the other hand, her daggers were much more effective against the ogres with their current lack of armor. Daniel is doing the maths in his own head as well, weighing the risk and reward of staying on the 7th floor. A single ogre they could handle, it seemed, without injury. Two might be problematic, especially as Asen's knives were damaging but not deadly. He would have to focus almost exclusively on defense if he had to fight two. Still, he probably could do it. Stay. The two speak at almost the same time, and then Asen chuffs in amusement. Decision made, she lopes ahead to check out potential problems, though a part of her resolves to avoid having to fight more than one at a time. Best to be careful. Elsa. Daniel smiles slightly, spotting the attendant in the guild hall as the pair limp in, looking the worse for wear. The 7th floor had been tough, and thrice they had decided to stay hidden or bypass corridors rather than fight a pair of ogres. However, the floor had been highly profitable in both experience and mana stones. He passes her the collected stones, watching her tally the stones. "Where's Liev?" "Oh, he took the day off." Elsa smiles at him, dirty blonde hair momentarily covering her eyes. She sweeps her hair aside, smiling up at the young adventurer. He and his catkin associate were the talk of the guild, their progress the best the guild had seen in the last few years. Why, they were down on the 7th floor already. Most adventurers who chose to complete the dungeon found themselves stuck on the 6th floor for at least a year, grinding levels till they could gain enough strength or a skill proficiency to destroy the titanic crawler. "Really?" Daniel frowns, concern flashing across his face. Was the old bureaucrat sick? "Most people don't work every day," Elsa says. "Yeah, but..." Daniel doesn't know what to say to that. After all, Liev has been here every time he's been here. Asen is chuffing beside him, obviously amused. Elsa just points a finger at her and says, "You're his partner. You're in here just as much as he is." "Makes me." Elsa just looks at the money-crazy cat girl. After all, Elsa was Asen's unofficial attendant. She was the one who Asen came to when she needed to find a partner who would work as hard as she did and who wouldn't hold her race against her. Asen pretends to miss the look, scratching at her own ear. A gentle cough reminds Elsa that they still haven't been paid out yet, at which point she returns to her work, point having been made. Sometimes these youngsters really didn't know when to stop.